Hey everybody, welcome back to Anime Sekai Podcast. I am your host, Ichigo.
And I'm your host, Mikan.
Join us this week as we wrap up our love month and discuss the anime movie Hal. Hey everybody, welcome back.
Hey guys.
Thank you guys so much for joining us this week. This is our final episode for Love Month. So we
So
hope you
sad.
guys have enjoyed this. I know, it was quick.
hmm But I'm
It was
glad
really quick.
single me is like, nuh-uh. Single me sad about this. Makes me feel
Are
more
you sad that
single.
it's wrapping up?
No, I'm sad that I'm single during love month. It's all just making me more sad.
I know this month has been nothing but fun. We've been talking about beautiful romance and top anime couples and our female crushes. Once again, shout out to Curtis from Black
hmm
Heroes for joining us on last week's episode. Thanks, Curtis.
Thanks, Curtis. I'm sorry you're back in the basement.
Mikan put him down there.
hmm
So this week we are wrapping things up by discussing the anime movie Howl. And for those that have not seen it, we will be giving spoilers. So if you are interested in watching this movie, we suggest going to watch the movie and then come back to listen to this episode.
Yes,
Um,
major disclaimer, guys. Being spoiled for this movie honestly kind of destroys the whole premise of the movie. So, highly, highly recommend just go watch it. Don't read anything about it. Trust us and just go watch it
yeah,
and then come back.
yeah, yes, yes. But on to the synopsis. So, this movie is about a young, beautiful woman named Kurumi, whose beloved boyfriend, Hal, or Haru, died in a sudden airplane accident. Left heartbroken and gloomy, she isolates herself in a small house, but this soon comes to change when her grandfather requests the help of a humanoid robot named Q01. Taking on the appearance of Hal, Q01 is sent to Kurumi's house in order to save her from her state of despair. Okay, so this is a love story about a human and a android, which is really interesting, especially because the premise behind this movie is overcoming grief.
hmm Once again, guys, your last warning, go watch the movie because I'm telling you, the spoiler is it's not gonna ruin the movie, but it's definitely that first viewing that you get when you first watch it without knowing anything about this movie is incredible. It's amazing. It's really hard to
Mhm.
get this type of good plot, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
So please go watch it and then
Yes.
come back, okay? And then come back.
All right. So this is your final warning.
Your final
Okay.
warning, guys. We're going right in.
We're going right in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so
Okay.
I love this movie, girl. I love this movie so
I
much.
know. I'm telling you, like, for those of you who have seen it, like, oh my God, I know that first viewing when you first saw that plot twist.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure if you guys weren't spoiled with it and watched it, I know none of you were ready for that. I know most people were not ready for that plot twist. We thought it was going to be like a cutesy little, love
Yeah,
story
like
about overcoming, but dang.
well, overcoming grief in the sense of she and I'm discussing this as like before the plot twist,
Mhm.
but she has finally started to open up a little bit. She's trying to, she's thinking of the past and she is moving forward with trying to move on without Hal in her life, even though technically a humanoid version of him is, in which case it's almost like a symbol of there's still a chance to find love after grief and after a heavy loss.
Interesting.
To
Oh, you
me,
mean
that's
like,
how I saw
yeah,
it.
that's how you saw it. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah. Or the other part to that is you cannot overcome your grief by yourself
Interesting.
because she wasn't eating, she wasn't smiling, she was basically a hikikomori and
Yeah.
not wanting to basically move on with her life because Hal had unexpectedly died in a plane crash.
Yeah. Yeah, when I first saw this movie, I was kind of interested because I was like, how the heck would this type of therapy work for someone who's grieving? You literally bring a robot that sounds and looks and
Mhm.
basically personifies the person that you lost. I was like, that's really messed up. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
Well, I would agree with that to a certain degree
Yeah.
because in her particular case, it was a sudden tragic loss. And so I think the humanoid version of how his role is whatever you did not get a chance to say, whatever regrets that you may have, you can do it with this humanoid version of him. Because
Mm.
they say in the beginning of the movie, like, you agreed, like somebody let you know that I was coming.
Mhm.
And Hal then says, like, she says, go away. And he was like, okay, I'll go away, but I need you to sign these paperwork saying that you don't want to be treated.
Yeah.
So I think it's like almost like a here's your final chance to
Mhm.
tell me the humanoid version of the person that you lost, whatever feelings that you're feeling, and then slowly come out of it and slowly move forward with your life to where you have now overcome this, not fully overcome, but like, you have now kind of overcome, quote unquote, this part of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. So the thing was for me when I was watching it from her perspective, um like in the beginning, I was like, this is a really weird, kind of messed up way to go about therapy."
Mhm.
Um because you're kind of not allowing the person to let go. But when I got to see it again, like especially this time around, I will
Mhm.
say, like even before the movie started, mind you, um, it is love month and I've been single, so like I was getting emotional. Like when I started watched it again, I was just like, "Oh my god." Just
I
thinking
did
about
too.
like knowing that he's the one that was grieving.
Mhm.
Um, but when I saw it from her perspective, when before I knew, she was the one that was dead, uh, it kind of felt more messed up because I was like, I feel like how is this helping her move on?
Mm.
Because he's coming into her life in a sense,
Mhm.
and the robot is like pulling her out, right? But
Right.
when I found out like he's dead and I got to watch it from his perspective, it made a little more sense because this time around, he like I said before, he's coming into her life,
Mhm.
but with, like, a new set of eyes pretending like, oh, like, experiencing life all over again, and I love those scenes where he's, like, looking around the stores and, um, sitting on the train looking at nature and kinda like, "Oh, I'm
Mhm.
reborn," in a sense,
Yeah.
and he's just because a part of him did die, like, a person he loved passed away, and really tragically too, and
Mhm.
probably it seemed like on a bad note, um, and so he was able to sort of be reborn, thinking he's a robot or living in that delusion for a
Right.
moment and experience life again, in a
Right.
sense, and
Right.
so in that way, I felt like the therapy made a little more sense because it wasn't that the party that needed therapy, like, the robot was coming into the person's life, but the person was coming into the robot's life. I don't know if that makes sense, but it felt a little more not as insane when I saw it from that perspective. It didn't feel as messed up, although it is still kinda messed up to have literally the embodiment of somebody you love in a robot, like
Yeah, I was trying to put myself in her shoes when it
Mhm.
was, like, her perspective, and I was thinking, like, if I ever lost my husband
Mhm.
or even, like, you or, anybody in my family, close friends, and I was that overcome with grief. Let's
Yeah.
say, heaven forbid, it was my husband, and I was that overcome with grief to where somebody had to put me in this program to send me a humanoid version of him.
Mhm.
I honestly don't know how I would feel.
Yes.
In which case, I might kind of do the same thing that she did. She was
Mhm.
shut down. She, couldn't talk. She couldn't eat. She was just going through the stages of grief. And, the final stage of the stage of grief is acceptance. And, excuse me, it was like once she finally started to open up, she was slowly accepting her reality that Hal was no longer, well, from her perspective, Hal was no longer going to be with her, but she still had other opportunities to see life for what it was. And
Mm.
then you get hit with that plot twist. And I
Yeah.
still kind of see it as her acceptance of reality from her perspective was more gentle, whereas plot twist, his perspective of reality was a lot more harsh. Like, if you look at it, hers was like a sudden realization, and his, he basically got reality knocked into him.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it was like gentle, slow transition to hard facts, hard face of reality,
Mm.
which I did kind of enjoy, I guess, in a sense. Like, obviously, I didn't enjoy the realization of now that you've lost somebody, but it was the approach that I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah. So, for me, like, when I watched it the first time,
Mhm.
because I'm thinking if somebody who I loved passed away and then they sent me a robot that looks exactly like that person, it would be more like anger and rage, and it would probably make me feel a lot worse. And so
Okay.
when I saw her reaction in the beginning of like, "Ooh," like, I I felt like that was just not realistic. Um, that
Mm,
she wasn't, like, as messed up about it, but it made so much more sense when the plot twist happened, and I was like, "Oh, okay. He's the one that needs fixing. He's the one that needs help."
well, I think hers was realistic to me,
Mm-mm.
and I think the reason it was realistic to me is because she's probably been in that space for a while. And like I said, when Hal showed up at her door, he says, "They told you I was coming today, correct?"
Mhm.
Which means she was informed. Now, what we don't see is, let's say that was the case. She probably went off, had a whole rage moment, and they were like, it was her grandfather who set it up, right? So let's
Mhm.
say she went off on her grandfather. The reason we don't see that is because he was really like, "Look, you are not okay, and I have to do something in order to pull you out so you can be okay."
Mhm.
So it's kind of like a forced, well, now that I'm saying that, it's almost like the grandfather's way of forcing her into reality, but allowing her to, quote unquote, have her final moments with the person that she lost so tragically. And the only way to do that is to send this humanoid version of him. Because
Mhm.
if you think about it, if it was a different humanoid, just robot in general, I don't think she would have opened up at all.
Oh, yeah, I mean, then in that case, it would've just been better to send somebody else, you know?
Right, right. And I think if that's the case, they probably did try to send other people. That didn't work. So let's try this outrageous idea. And it happened to work. Now, let me just side note, whoever made that robot, which I think is the professor. Dude,
Mhm.
the half ball professor with the glasses,
I think he's, like, more of a doctor, because
is
I
he a
think in this
doctor?
world yeah, they have because he was helping, like, I think town doctor, or whatever, because he was
Mm,
helping the ladies and whatnot. The humanoids, like, the robots were already existing. I think you can just, like, purchase one. I'm assuming in this world, right?
so like
Um,
Chobits.
kind of, yeah. And so he was just there for his therapy, to help
Well,
him.
here's the thing. I feel like Hal was the only humanoid android, the only one, because people couldn't really tell that he wasn't
Yeah, yeah.
human. And
Well,
number
he
2,
wasn't,
whoever
so I don't think
right,
they have them.
whoever made Q01
Mhm.
needs to be rolling in some money right now, okay? Because that was such a clever idea. For me personally, like, you send like a grief robot or like a robot that helps you with either overcome grief or overcomes like
I
something that you're
I don't think that's actually what they're for.
I know, but Q01 was technically Q01 just yeah, real quick, is the robot that is
Yeah.
Hal,
He's just a house helper, and so they
who
kind of just
eventually
ask
becomes
him yeah.
Hal. But that's what I'm saying. Like they use Q01 for therapy. So I'm wondering, and I'm going
I
off
mean, he
grid,
becomes
but
Kurumi? Yeah.
yeah, who helps Kurumi
Yeah.
and then in turn ends up being Kurumi. Um, I'm wondering like who made that robot? Because even in the opening, Q01 seems to be literally the only robot. Like, are
No,
there
there's other
others?
robots. There's other
Where?
robots. When they talk about his childhood, Hal's childhood.
Oh,
So there's
okay. Right, right, right.
other robots. I don't know if they're all humanoid because the robots, were like regular I don't think they're typically humanoid. I think you can get like this is weird to say, but like human like their skin, they can put skins on them.
Mhm.
Like,
Like Chobits.
um, yeah, but I don't think they're typically like they're not really used for that. They in this scenario, they just probably asked, "Hey, this robot probably knew her, and they could
Mm,
upload her with some memories and whatnot." And was maybe a house robot for a while. And so I was like, "Hey, that's the robot I have right now. He's pretty humanoid. Like, can you help? Can you help Hal out? Like, he needs some therapy."
he needs some help. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
But there
Okay,
are
well then,
other
yeah, I forgot about
robots.
that part.
Yeah.
I forgot about that scene, yeah. So just so we're very clear, the major plot twist of this movie, you guys, is um in the beginning it is understood that Hal, aka Q01, is the robot.
Mhm.
However, major plot twist happens and we actually find out that Q01 is actually Kurumi
Kurumi.
and Hal is alive, but he is so stricken with grief that he has become a quote unquote robot version of himself, and he himself believes that he is a robot.
Mhm.
So Kurumi's grandfather sends Q01 as Kurumi in order to help him overcome his grief.
Mhm.
Now, we learn this when
His friend knocks the sense into him.
yeah, Hal's friend Ryu comes and they quote unquote meet again. And Ryu is proposing that Hal help him sell Kurumi.
Mhm.
Now,
Or
this
the
is
robot.
before the major plot twist is revealed. Okay. So in the beginning, I didn't catch this the first time, but I caught it this time
Mhm.
when Ryu was like, "Hey, we should sell her. Like, you should let me sell her."
Yeah.
And I was like, what a disgusting thing to say about a woman. Because I completely forgot about the plot twist, like,
Yeah.
completely forgot.
Really?
And then they did yeah,
How
because
could you
it's been
forget
that
that?
long. It's been that long since I've seen it that
Oh my
I just
gosh.
completely forgot
I
about
could never
the
forget this
plot
ending.
twist. I was like, "He's really talking about, like, yeah, we gonna sell her," and I'm like, "How?" disgusting.
Mhm.
Like, I can't believe that is coming
So
out of Miyano Mamoru's mouth right now. Like, what in the world? And then they
you
did the
were
plot
like,
twist, and I
"Oh."
was like, "Oh, right, right. She's a robot. That's why."
Mhm.
I was heated. I was so mad.
And actually, this time around when I watched it, because I totally forgot about Hal's past, which they mentioned a bit. And
Yeah,
this is one thing I kind of wish this would have been maybe a bit more of a TV show because I would have loved to see his backstory be fleshed out because it seems
a
really,
little
really
bit.
sad.
Yeah.
Because they talk about like he had a weak heart and his parents got him a heart or got him surgery, and then they literally left him, pieced out, and left him
Mhm.
in debt. And he did all those, like, difficult things that robots couldn't do and whatnot. Oh my god, I
Mhm.
was so heartbroken. I've totally forgot about that, and I if that was fleshed out more, it would've been really fascinating to see, especially, like, his healing with a robot, um,
Right,
would have made it more fascinating.
right. Well, that also makes sense as to why, because he says, "I don't trust robots."
You mean his friend? Or him?
Both. Hal at one point, I think when he comes, like, either right before he comes to the realization or something. Oh, no, it was you too, Hal. We don't trust robots.
Mhm.
Like, AKA, Kurumi is not real. She's a robot. Oh
Yeah.
man, that just hit me. That really just hit me. That's why he kept like trying to get him to snap out of it.
Yeah. Because he first of all, he doesn't trust robots, and obviously his friend has kinda lost his mind,
And is walking around
granted.
with a robot.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that the thing I was wondering I know you were heated about her adieu, but for me, I'm like, how long would they have kept this therapy up? And if the longer it is, I feel like the worse it'll just get. Like I'm thinking of someone who has to grieve and you're still
Mm,
in Delulu land for the longer you are, the more painful that withdrawal will be in the end when you have to
mhm.
let go. So the fact that he kind of woke him up, I feel like if nobody else would have done it, like the dude had to do it. You know what I mean? I mean, granted, for
Yeah.
story's sake, he had to like they had to make it quick, but I'm like, how long would they have to kept this up? Everyone would have just kept lying and pretending like everything was okay, and he was a robot. I'm like, how healthy can that be?
Well, for the sake of his own happiness, like if he seemed happy, then they're not going to
That's
make
mentally
him.
destructive, though.
Yeah,
Like,
it is.
most real therapists will tell you that is really, really unhealthy.
Mhm.
Because when he snaps back, that's why I like the new character in a sense. Like he went about it all the wrong ways, but I understand him as a character. One, that's his friend, right? He got to look out for
Right.
his friend because apparently everyone else is just fine with the delusion. And two, he
Mhm.
also has something against robots. So the fact that as a friend, he's like, this robot, like, get away from her, kind of thing. So I get him. I get him
Mhm.
as a character and the things they probably went through together.
Well, yeah, they
Um,
also that's how they met. Like they have that
yeah.
flashback to
Mhm.
where you learn a little bit more about Hal's background, and then
Yep.
you find out that's how he and Hal met,
Mhm.
and they've kind of stuck together ever since. You probably thinks of Hal as like a brother,
Yeah.
in which case he's like, I need to snap you back to reality.
Yeah.
Because when he punched him so hard that like blood started, trickling out of his nose and out the corner of his mouth.
That was supposed to be, like, symbolic because everyone would start to realize,
Mhm.
"Wait a minute, why is he bleeding?" And I
Right.
did like that.
Cause that's the part that I was like, "Oh, I forgot about
Is
this
that what
plot
you remember?
twist." Yes, that's when I remembered it. Cause I was like, "Why is he bleeding? Robots don't bleed."
Girl, how do you forget
Right.
that? That's crazy.
Because I haven't seen the movie since 2013 when it came out.
That's like watching what is it, Sixth Sense, was it? Yeah, and
Yeah.
forgetting the ending. I wish I could.
Mhm.
I wish I could. That would be a great experience. I could rewatch it again. But no,
I
I can't
completely
forget it.
forgot. Yeah. I like it completely ran from my head. So,
Wow.
yeah. So, um now in the beginning, I really liked Yu's character. This time around, he got on my nerves. Just a little bit. And I'm sorry
Really?
because I'm a huge Miyano Mamoru fan and I know he
You
voices
sure
him.
are.
But I think he got, and it could have just been like the portrayal of Ryu's character and how they made him seem. Like, the movie this time
Really?
around, to me, made him seem like, oh, all he does is just go after the money. Like, that's all he wants to go after rather than, "I'm caring for you." Like, when he sees Hal again, he's like, "Oh, I've been looking for you." And I'm like, "Okay." But it seems like, "I've been looking for you so that I can tell you what our next big thing is so we can get more money." To me, that's how it seemed,
Hmm.
because he was also running from them other people.
I mean, they didn't really I wish they would've delved on that, but they didn't really delve too much on, like, where they are at in life right now. Because the first time around, when I didn't know, obviously, the plot twist, I was like,
Mhm.
"Ew, what a scummy human being." But this
Exactly.
time around, I saw it with different eyes of, like, "That's my brother, like, and I hate robots, so let me get
Mhm.
him away from her. Let me snap him out because nobody else will," kinda thing. Granted it was violent and probably not the approach I would have taken, but, I mean, they grew up in a very messed up way.
Yeah.
So, I appreciated him more because for me, I'd rather, like, people close to me like, instead of just lying to me and letting me live in this delusion, I'd rather people that cared about me give me some tough love, like, slap
Mhm.
me out of it because the longer I sit in this and the longer I, like, let this boil and stew, the grief is only gonna get more painful.
Right. Right. So I felt like that in the beginning, like when he came out.
Mhm,
But when he snaps Hal back into reality and he was like, Kurumi is not alive anymore. Like, that is not her. Like, please don't go. Like, he was begging him not to go and like crying. I was like,
mhm.
that is his brother right there. Like,
Yeah,
they are not blood brothers, but that right there is his brother. They grew up
mhm.
together. They go through like everything together. Like, that is a true friend right there. And that tough love is needed.
Yeah, that's also why I didn't like, the first time around, I really thought this form of therapy was messed up when I didn't know the plot twist because I mean, granted, this form too as well, but, like, they kinda did it because he just needed help, I guess. But you basically have to grieve the person 2 times, you
Mhm,
know, which is so
mhm.
messed up. Like, already having to grieve someone once and then having to say goodbye again. I'm like, "Dang."
Yeah,
Um,
but I think the preface of this movie is that he's stuck in denial, which is the first stage of
well,
grief.
yeah, that's why in the when I first thought it was her, I was like, "Dang, this is a messed up type of therapy." But that's why it made
Mhm.
more sense when it was, coming from him, because he just wasn't he just needed
Denial,
to be Delulu, yeah.
right. Well, and for her, it was the Rubik's Cube that I think helped slowly, quote unquote, bring her out, because with the Rubik's Cube, they were doing the wishes that
Mhm,
were written on the Rubik's Cube. If it had been completely solved and they had done all the things that were written on the Rubik's Cube, let's say that like Hal had unfortunately passed away on the airplane, and this was actually Kurumi being alive and going through grief, like it would have slowly helped her pull out of her grief through that Rubik's Cube, because it's almost like
mhm.
she's checking off each, let's say, final regret or like final wish that she had for their relationship. So, like,
Interesting.
I want to go to the festival and he takes her to the festival. I want like something about the giraffes and then he goes out and he gets this big giant giraffe.
Mhm.
Or the when like he's going to different people and they're helping him solve the Rubik's Cube
Yeah,
so that you see what message was left.
yeah.
And
I actually really like that. Like,
I
where
did
it's
too.
he didn't solve it himself, it was, like, other people who were maybe part of her life or who weren't,
Mhm.
helped to solve it for him and realizing, like, "Oh, there's other people in this world," kind of thing, where it's like, I couldn't have done it without them.
Right, that he has a true support system
Yeah,
beyond her.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
he's really not by himself.
Mhm, yeah. I also love the aspect that you get to see kind of like the little moments she left behind, like,
Mhm.
the fact that she was gone, but there's still memories that she had in other people, like the grannies, they knew her, they loved her, and she left a mark on them for enough for, what's that old lady's name? uh, Tsukiko, I
The
think? Yeah, to help
yeah, Tsukiko,
him,
uh-huh.
and like, I love seeing that kind of thing because you get a perspective on, like, the things that someone who has left, like, there's still pieces of them here because they left memories behind with other people or moments or kindness or whatever with other people, and those other people then show it to somebody that she
Mhm,
cared about, and I really love how they, like, kinda use that, and that's kind of what I thought was interesting when I first watched it because I was like, "If it's a healing journey for her, why are we only getting Hal's perspective and him, like, interacting with the world and kind of being saved or, like, seeing the world?" That's why I kinda thought it was, like, more like about a robot because
mhm.
I only got his perspective, but obviously finding out, oh, it's
It's
he's
more
the one
for
that's
him,
alive. So
yeah. Well, and also, did you notice that technically Q01 can't talk? So the only time Kurumi's character talks is when it's a flashback,
Oh,
or if it was that little button, the digital button that, like, showed memories.
really?
That was the
Wait.
only time, and,
Snap.
like, the grandmothers and stuff, like, nobody sees Kurumi,
Yeah, yeah, no one sees Kurumi, yep.
right? And so when Hal comes home with that giraffe, it's the doctor knows it's the robot, right? But
Yeah,
the robot doesn't say thank you. She just leaves a note
yeah,
and says Robo Hal because Hal thinks he's a robot,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But there's no other interaction between Kurumi and, like, not even the grandfather. And I think what the scene where Hal goes and picks up the yukatas for the
Mhm.
Gion festival
Yeah,
and he gives it to Kurumi,
yeah.
I think he's, like, imagining what Kurumi would have said rather than Kurumi's, like, the robot actually saying anything. Because the whole time the robot doesn't speak. It just nods its head,
Mm.
but
Oh
it
my god, I
doesn't,
didn't notice that.
there's no actual line. Yeah.
Hmm. Really?
But
Wait, but she interacts
none
yeah.
of the other characters actually interact with her except for the grandfather and the doctor. But the
No, but
grandfather and
with
the
the
doctor,
kids and when they
no,
fight, like, the fight scene, and she talks. She, like, says "Hal" and her mouth moves.
I think that was a flashback.
No, 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 that's when they're running from in the yukatas.
So, like, anytime she quote unquote speaks to him, I think that's him imagining her speaking. Because in the end, when she, like, lets his hand go, she doesn't
Mhm.
speak to him.
In the end, when?
Like, when she is basically about to be taken by the, I'll call them the goons. Um, she looks at him and then he goes after her, but not one point in time does she say anything to him. And I think it's all in his head
Hmm?
as part of
But
the
the
delusion.
interesting. But her mouth does move. I mean, that's an interesting take, though,
That's how I saw it this time around. Was that she
because she
she
does
didn't
interact with
speak.
other people. Um,
I don't think so.
I mean, she interacts when they're, like, outside, and she interacts with mainly, I think the main interaction is when, the gang comes along.
Right, which I think is
Yeah.
supposed to signify him coming out of his delusion
Mhm.
and facing reality.
Interesting. I mean, but from what I remember, her, like, she's actually does talk, at least in the scenes, but I kinda like that take. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. This movie is so good.
It
It's so
is.
beautiful.
Honestly,
And it's so
I'm
sad.
it is really sad. It's really sad, and, like, in real life, it's kinda messed up to
Yeah.
think about, um, but it's really hard to do movies like this,
Yeah.
in my opinion. It's really hard to make it work with such a plot twist, Would I love to have more background information, particularly on how, like, in his childhood and whatnot? Yes, absolutely.
Mm,
But, it's done so well, and it's very
mhm.
cute. I don't even know if I can call this a romance because the other
It's a
partner is
tragic
gone.
romance.
It is.
I would call it a tragic romance.
Yeah. But the
Um,
romance is, like, with someone that's already gone, so for
right,
me,
but
I
there are
almost feel
still
like
flashback scenes to
yeah.
where they were still like when both of them were still I said both, when Kurumi was still alive and it showed the ups and the downs. So it shows them, fighting and arguing, but it also shows their happy times, like
Yeah.
him cooking for her and, them dreaming together and them making like these plans and stuff to do things together and,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, and he's kind of just learning to live again,
mhm.
being reborn,
Mhm.
since honestly, a part of his soul did die, which is so hard. Part of his heart is gone. So
Yeah.
sad.
Well, also that grandfather is strong because he knew he's so broken, he needs help. Like,
Mhm,
accuser one, you have to go help him. And I thought that that was really admirable.
mhm,
Because quite honestly, like, I don't think, like, let's say if well, I'm just thinking in terms of like if that grandfather was also just as heartbroken and grief stricken as Hal was, I don't think he would have found the strength to let the robot leave his side
mhm.
to go be with Hal and help Hal. If he was
Yeah,
selfish in any sort of way, he would have just been like, "Well, you can call me if you need anything, but I gotta focus on myself." Which
yeah,
the reality, if this was reality, that most likely that probably would have happened.
yeah. I mean, he saw someone who loved and cared about his granddaughter and was like,
Mhm.
"Let me help him."
Right. So,
It's so sad because, yeah, only only the living are left to grieve. So,
mhm.
mm, such a
So
beautiful story.
it is a beautiful
Highly
story.
recommend if y'all have not
Yes.
seen it. But I mean, we kind of spoiled it already.
Well, if you
So
have seen it, it's not spoiled.
hopefully not. And
It was a great
hopefully you went and
discussion.
watched it before you heard
Yes.
us spoil it because movies like this, you can like that first time you see it without the plot twist,
Mhm.
it's just so well done. It's really
Mhm.
well done. And I feel like this movie is actually really underrated.
It
I don't
is.
know why. It was just not it's not really well known, first of all.
Probably because it's kinda short, like, it's a movie, but
It
it's
is. It's like
literally
an
only an
hour or something.
hour.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really fast. That's why but the thing is, I feel like because it's so short, it's, like, easy to watch,
It is easy to watch, but I think if it would've been a little bit longer, it might have been, gotten more ratings, but
probably.
that
I
I think
honestly,
that's just
I feel
me.
like they missed out on him not giving the backstory and whatnot about how to end,
Well, at the
stuff like
point
that.
in time where they give the backstory, we're still thinking that Hal has passed away in the plane crash and that Kurumi is the one who is suffering, so she's
Mhm.
only telling robot Hal how alive Hal used to be, if that makes sense, like,
Yeah.
you know? So I think in that sense, like, it's not 100% necessary. I kinda wanna watch it again, but I know it's gonna make me sad.
It made me sad, and I wasn't even at the end.
It's so
I can't believe you
beautiful.
forgot. That's crazy.
I did, because I haven't seen the
That is
movie since
crazy.
2013. I
Even if
haven't.
I never see this movie again, I don't think I could forget this ending.
Well, no, now I'm not gonna forget now that I've seen it a
Ugh.
second time, but it just wasn't on like, quite honestly, I think I had forgotten about this movie until you brought it up
Oh,
in our top romance episode,
yeah.
and then I was like, "Oh, yeah, I have seen that movie. Oh, man, I kinda wanna watch that again."
Mhm.
And then I watched it again, and I was like, "Okay, now I remember everything," you know? So, it's so beautiful.
It's
So
really well done. Very
perfect
short,
way.
sweet, simple.
Yeah, perfect way to end Love Month, although it was tragic romance. At least
It
we didn't
is.
end it with Clannad.
that's tragic.
Yeah.
That's tragic. This
Yeah,
is like it is tragic, but it's also kind of hopeful, you know?
mhm.
I feel like Clan is just hopeless. That's just pain. We should do a review on Clannad though, because that is
No.
one of the animes that destroyed me in a good but horrifyingly sad way.
I don't want my heart to be ripped to shreds again.
We have to. I
Go
forgot a
ahead.
lot of like the little details, so we gotta watch it again
Maybe one day.
one day.
One day. So, but you guys let us know, how did you like the Howl movie if you've seen it? And if not, sorry we gave you spoilers, but we did warn you guys. We
Mhm,
did. We tried. But we hope you'll still try and seek it out on your own. It is a really amazing movie, highly underrated. And
mhm,
we thank you guys so much for joining us this month for Love Month. We hope you enjoyed this series, and we cannot wait to catch you guys next week with another brand new episode. And before we officially close out, I did a poll on shows for Mikan to watch.
mhm.
And I let you all, the audience, of those over there on Instagram, once again, thank you guys for voting, pick. So, Mikan, the audience has spoken, okay?
Mhm,
I gave them three choices. The three choices were A Sign of Affection,
mhm. Good one, good one.
Tokyo Mew Mew,
I hope not.
and
Ugh.
and Yakuza Fiance.
Okay, if y'all chose Tokyo Mew Mew, Imma be real disappointed.
And so the audience has picked Yakuza Fiance.
Okay, good, good, good. That's what I was hoping for too. That's what I
so,
was hoping for.
so Megan is going to watch Yakuza Fiance, and we're gonna have a
Ooh.
review on that in the next couple of weeks. So be sure to stay tuned. Thanks once again, guys, and be sure to follow us on our socials at Anime Sekai Podcast on both Instagram and TikTok. And if you have any suggestions for shows that you want us to review or ideas that you want us to talk about, be sure to let us know. Thank you guys so much, and we'll catch you guys next week. Bye,
See you
guys.
guys. Bye.